Our armed forces continue to chase terrorist groups in Aleppo, Al-Yarmouk camp and Al-Hajar al-Aswad. Al-Jaafari affirms that the Secretary General's report on children and armed conflicts is unprofessional and dishonest and aims at harming Syria. Iran says the USA and regional states support armed terrorist groups in Syria. Good afternoon, this is Zirado Krikorian with the news in English. Our armed forces continue to hunt down fleeing terrorists in Aleppo and its suburbs. They destroyed 15 DShK-equipped vehicles and killed the terrorists inside them near Al-Bab, Ikhtareen and Azaz districts. Armed units also carried out qualitative operations, killing and wounding members of armed terrorist groups near Al-Afrah Hall and Al-Aruba Club in Bustan al-Qasr and in the vicinity of Maysaloon Hospital, the further establishment in Maskana, the Agricultural Scientific Research Center in Manbij and Sajadan municipality in the governorate's suburbs. In Mara, in Aleppo suburbs, an army unit destroyed a weapons and ammunition warehouse that belonged to the terrorists. A military source also talked of clashes between army units and terrorist mercenaries in Baddin in Aleppo. Security men meanwhile clashed gunmen in Al-Arqoub, clearing the factories area of terrorists. The army also targeted terrorist gatherings in Qadi Askar, inflicting on them heavy losses. In Damascus and in cooperation with the inhabitants of the camp, army units captured about 100 terrorists in Al-Tala'a Park in Palestine camp and near Al-Wasim Mosque in Al-Yarmouk camp. They had infiltrated into both camps from neighboring areas. In Damascus suburbs, an army unit stormed into a terrorist hideout in Al-Ghazali quarter in Al-Hajar al-Aswad neighborhood, killing several gunmen. During the operation, a field hospital was found. Our army forces also broke into a terrorist hideout in Tishreen quarter in Al-Hajar al-Aswad, confiscating weapons and military uniforms and killing a number of terrorists. In Homs, an army unit destroyed 4 DShK-equipped vehicles and a minibus used by terrorists in Talbisa in the governorate suburbs, killing a large number of terrorists. Another army unit destroyed an armed group's headquarters in Tal Sakraja in Al-Qsair suburbs, killing and wounding a number of gunmen. The unit killed 6 terrorists who used the place to launch their attacks on citizens. Army units also foiled an infiltration attempt into Syria through Tal Kalakh suburbs and at Halad, Idlib and beyond sites. The clashes left several terrorists injured as the rest fled back into Lebanese territories. Also in Homs, the authorities clashed with an armed terrorist group in Bab Houd and Bab al-Turkman quarters at dawn today, killing and wounding dozens of them. The army intercepted a terrorist group who tried to attack law enforcement troops and citizens near Al-Naqira village in Homs suburbs, killing 3 terrorists and wounding 6 others. An army unit intercepted an armed terrorist group which was attacking citizens and public properties in the city of Tal Abyad in Al-Raqqa, inflicting heavy losses on the gunmen. A source in the governorate reported that our army units killed dozens of terrorists and wounded others. Another terrorist group which was setting up barricades and terrorizing citizens was also eliminated by the Syrian Arab army in Al-Rashid and Skero villages in Al-Raqqa suburbs. Within the framework of the terrorists' continuous attempts to target national expertise, an armed terrorist group kidnapped today the director of Dar'a and Suwaida Awqaf Directorate's Muammar Shahadat in front of the Directorate's premises in Dar'a. Our news correspondent quoted a source in the governorate as saying that Haddad was taken to an unidentified place. Another terrorist group also assassinated head of the production section at the military housing establishment branch in Al-Hasaka, engineer Marwan Al-Hussein, who had been shot in front of his house while he was heading to his work this morning. They stole his double-cabin pickup car. The Minister of Information has declared that the fall of a helicopter in Damascus suburbs this morning was the result of an air accident caused by the friction of the helicopter with the backward part of a civil plane that belonged to the Syrian Arab Airlines. The observation tower at Damascus International Airport and the Syrian Arab Airlines affirm that the civil plane landed safely and no one of its 200 passengers was hurt. Syria dismissed the UN Secretary-General's 11th annual report on children and armed conflict as unprofessional, dishonest and motivated by incitement, as it is aimed at harming Syria and tarnishing its reputation. Delivering Syria's statement at an open UN Security Council session, Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Bashar Al-Jaafari, voiced deep concern over the wrong information included in the report by the outgoing UN Special Representative for Children and Armed Conflict, Radhika Kumaraswamy. Al-Jaafari stated that Syria rejects all the allegations brought in the report and denounces politicizing this important humanitarian issue. He decried the report as lacking the evidence and facts and depending instead on mere media-based anti-Syria claims, wishing that the report's makers would have at least taken into consideration the Syrian government's point of view. The Syrian ambassador denounced Kumaraswamy's insistence on placing the full responsibility for the acts of violence against children in Syria on the security and military authorities, lashing out at her deliberate exclusion of the tens of other political and media reports and the testimonies of non-governmental parties which gave evidence on the armed terrorist groups' resolve to conscripting children within their ranks and forcing them to carry arms. Al-Jaafari denounced devoting 8 paragraphs on Syria in the report while completely ignoring any reference to the suffering of the Syrian children under the yoke of the Israeli occupation in the occupied Syrian Golan in all fields of life, including education, food and water, in addition to the mines which have claimed 202 children and caused permanent disabilities to 329 others. Head of Iranian Shura Council Ali Larijani stressed that big quantities of weapons are being sent to armed terrorist groups in Syria from the US and some regional countries. In an interview with the British newspaper, the Financial Times, Larijani pointed out that those countries which were involved in the events in Syria expected Syria to change its attitudes, but they failed miserably in this regard. He wondered if the United States seeks to impose reforms in Syria through RPG launchers, as it refrains from doing so against some states ruled by kings and emirs. He added that those who are interfering in Syria's internal affairs must be held responsible for shedding the Syrian blood. Russia had sent 80 tons of humanitarian aid to Syria in the past, and it is sending 38 tons of food supplies now to the Syrian people harmed by the Western sanctions, as well as by acts of sabotage and destruction carried out by the armed terrorist groups. A Russian plane carrying humanitarian aid supplies arrived at Damascus International Airport, carrying on board 38 tons of food supplies in aid as part of a first aid shipment, with a second aid shipment scheduled to arrive tomorrow. The government has reiterated readiness to do all that is necessary to ensure the return of citizens who had been displaced due to the crimes of the armed terrorist groups. During a press conference, Dr. Ali Haidar, Minister of State for National Reconciliation Affairs, stressed that military action is necessary for any political process because it clears areas of terrorism and spreads security throughout the homeland, and it is not an alternative to a political solution to the Syrian crisis. crisis. He affirmed the presence of a comprehensive mechanism to settle the status of those who turn themselves in order to ensure their return to normal life. Haider said the state is clearly decisive about resorting to dialogue, which needs a preparatory stage that paves the way to the central table of negotiations according to the representation quorum. The participants in the Arab Intellectuals and the Syrian Crisis, Ideas and Solutions seminar have affirmed rejection and condemnation of all forms of foreign intervention in Syria, stressing that solving the crisis is only in the hands of the Syrians according to an objective dialogue that embraces Syria's unity, security and sovereignty and the protection of its national texture. They affirmed that such texture is an integral part of the Arab nation and its moral, human and cultural fabric. They stressed that the fabrications against Syria were pre-planned and intentional with a view of changing the face of the region to create the so-called New Middle East. They pointed out that Syria needs a developed media in every sense of the word. The Arab Intellectuals and the Crisis in Syria, Ideas and Solutions seminar had concluded its activity in Damascus yesterday with the participation of 39 writers and intellectuals and representatives of a number of Arab writers' unions under the motto, Arab intellectuals are the conscience of the nation and the guards of its sovereignty. With this, we end our news bulletin for today. For more information about Syria and the region, or to watch our bulletin again, you can visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now the latest business and market news with Khalid Saqabani after a short break.